I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, the head coach for JobSearchCoachingHQ.com, and welcome to Job Search TV. I like to spend some time, at this point daily, talking with you about some element of job search because I don't believe it has to be as hard, difficult, painful, or take as long as it does. There are different skills to finding a job than doing a job. And what I've done is create a mountain of content. And if you look me up, you'll discover what that statement is true. And today's video is designed to answer one of those tough interview questions. Give me an example of working with someone who is hard to work with. And how did you handle interactions with that person? Boy, that's a tough one. And your answer really depends on your level of seniority. So I want to be clear. I'm not talking about abusive situations. I'm not talking about the extremes when answering this question. I think if you bring those up in interviews, you run a risk. And the risk is, can the other person hear them and not think of you as being defective, harmed, someone who can't express them, contain themselves and are bringing the wound of the previous environment into the new one. Most firms, although they're going to tell you that they hear you and accept you, they're going to find reluctance within their organization to move forward with you. So your answer has to be moderated. So let me take the extremes off the table and go to the core scenarios. Now, most situations professionally for people, there are things like, I don't get along with this person. Or this person, in one case that I worked with, the best way to describe the individual was they were a scoundrel. I'm not going to go into details, but I'll just simply say part of the reason that we get our buttons pushed by people is they remind us of someone from our past who did much the same thing. For example, there's a person who I'm coaching now who interviewed for a role, and they met with someone who clearly reminded them of their mom. And, that button got pressed through demeanor. It got pressed through the questioning and querying that took place in the interview. And, if my coachee winds up responding to them as they might have to their mother, well, clearly they're going to be bumping heads because that was a lot of their dynamic growing up. And it doesn't serve the interest that they have, the coachee has. So you want to remember that in the standard situation, it's about you and your memories. It's not about the present time. Now, I'll deal with the present time in a second, but you might start off by answering the question by saying, what I try to do before I go into interactions with people is to remember whether it's about them or it's about me. And most of the time, it's about me. So when I work with someone who's hard to get along with, most of the time it's because they've pressed my buttons in some way. And what I want to do is diffuse the emotion of the interaction and just go to the facts of the situation so that this way I'm not carrying extra luggage into the room with me, if you understand the metaphor, and I can just focus on the immediate of the situation. And you can enhance that with a story where you've done that previously. Now, if you're a manager, if you're a leader in an organization, sometimes it's not about, shall we say, these emotional buttons being pushed. There are clearly behavioral flaws that the person has where they go beyond corporate standards. So, for example, there were the classic cases of American business people who were paying off foreign corporate heads in violation of U.S. law and in violation of corporate standards. But that was the way they understood to do business in those parts of the world. So there are times where you have to say, I met with the HR organization, and obviously, again, another extreme example, yours might be scaled down, the person who conducts themselves in a way where they just think it's more important to do the sale than to be honest with people and the potential impact of that. So you might just simply say, under certain circumstances, what I've had to do is meet with my HR organization and develop a check in my mind to see whether or not there was an issue that existed, and verify that my thinking about it was correct, get them involved with it, start to document what my thoughts were and the behavioral issues. And we wound up having a meeting with the individual to basically put them on, this is my language, I'm trying to be facetious, double secret probation, where they're notified that for the next 90 days or for some period of time, their performance has to return to this benchmark or they're fired. In sales organizations, that's very easy. And it's something I've recommended to one of the people I coach with, someone who just had not performed. And there was always the concern about, this is a woman, the hiring, her boss is a man. Was there an issue that was going to be dealt with related to gender? And we wanted to document her poor performance and what was being asked of her to do within this 90-day period. If she met it, he was prepared to be effusive in praise. If she didn't, she was going to be let go. And without completing the story about what the outcomes are, what's important is, for the purpose of the interview, when you're dealing with hard to work with colleagues, sometimes you have to say to yourself, as a leader, the behavior is the problem. They're not following, the requirements of the role. And I need to get the HR organization in, document what the issues are, so that in this way I can get their input into how to resolve this more effectively. That if it's me, I'm willing to work on that and see where my part in this is. If it's the employee, I want to help them perform at the correct level. And again, if it's an emotional thing, normally what's happened is if you take some quiet time and sit with yourself and ask yourself, who does this person remind me of? You'll discover that there's someone from your past who this individual reminds you of, either through their behavior, their actions, what have you, where the affront occurred, and you can't bring that into the room with you. So hope you found this helpful. I have a lot more at jobsearchcoachinghq.com, and that's curated down to a fine element. And I have most of my content in the blog at thebiggamehunter.us or on YouTube. You can also subscribe to my podcast, No BS Job Search Advice Radio, and Job Search Radio, which are currently number 1 and number 2 for episodes in Apple Music around job hunting. So hope you found this helpful. And by the way, if you'd be interested in my coaching you, reach out to me by connecting with me on LinkedIn first at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. And once we're connected, message me. We'll schedule a time to speak. Have a great day. Take care.